Okay. Welcome back to Lenz Comic Corner Classic Known Classics. This is episode number 2160 in Doubleshot number 2054. We're going to do basically 4 issues of Boost to Gold and, of course, also a Black Knight trade. Now, why am I discussing these 4? It's actually 5 issues. It is, in case you're curious, it is Boost to Gold issue, volume 2, issues 39 to 40. Now, for some strange reason, these issues are not in trade, just like in the case of 1314. I don't know the reason for it. In the case of these issues in particular, were these written by some fill-in writer? No, they were not. They were written by the team who were writing the book at the time, Giffen and DeMatteis, and of course Chris Batista. Now, why in the world these were skipped? Why? Yeah, it just baffles me. They couldn't do one more trade before they did the Flashpoint Superman trade, which I'll discuss that in their video, by the way. But there's no reason for this at all. It's just 5, mostly, like, there's a couple of standalone issues, but there's a couple, sometimes loosely connected issues, but these issues in particular are the last issues that these guys write before Dan Jurgens comes back in the book for the Flashpoint tie-in issues. Yep. Now, the one thing Dan Jurgens' run did do when he was writing the book, he would revisit classic DC stories, ones that publishing in the last, 20, 30 years. And his one was awesome. King DeMatteis, I think it's still a pretty good run. So, the first issue, issue 39. Thank you. Okay, so mostly put, it just basically Booster just dealing with stuff related to the JLI. It just basically, his adopted daughter basically just try on Michelle's Golden Star suit. And the story is called Letting Go. It's just basically trying to, you have a guy trying to become a hero and just some kid. And, well, then he visits a grave, and he visits Ted Kord's grave. And because of that, he misses Ted Kord, and then we bring up, oh, General Glory is dead. Okay, then he puts his box back, and then the issue ends. Then they have a very interesting ending. We'll get to that. So he apologizes, Rennie, and of course, and then we have this weird thing of Ted Kord's grave just still being there, and of course, all the time it's still being in the same spot, and it's a nice issue. But then 40 starts a brief story arc. Yeah, and this is another one of these books where it has these amazing covers. Yeah, if you look at any issues that came out the month this book came out in, for some reason they all have this look. This white background with a carrot in the middle, and just say, hey, buy my book. So, yeah, this issue begins a story arc that pretty much consumes the rest of this run, where you have these guys investigating, whether it's on footage, the whole about Boost to Gold, called The Life and Times of Michael John Carter, where they basically explore his origin story, the fact that he got expelled for betting and stuff like that, stuff we already knew, and him stealing the Boost to Gold suit. Yeah, basically Dan Jurgens about addresses when he wrote the book, so Keith and DeMatteis decided to have an issue where they finally addressed the fact that Boost to Gold stole the stuff. And he has run out with stolen equipment for years. Yep, and of course they kind of detail stuff with what time travel. It's not much with time travel per se. And then the issue ends with Boost to Gold being arrested by Rip Hunter. Yep, and he's sent to jail. Yep, he is sent to jail. Yeah, and this pretty much consumes the next couple issues. So he's hauled off to jail for. Really wish basically to stop doing that. Yeah, so he is hauled up to jail in the very next issue. It's like, okay, let's do this brief standalone issue, and then have 40 to 43 basically be the story arc where, oh, let's have Booster go to jail for a couple issues because he actually stole stuff. So he's brought to the future, and the thing is, well, after dealing with like a break-in and stuff like that, he of course gets his trial, and well, so basically he is sentenced to 5 years in prison for this stuff, and he accepts, no problem. And he's like, oh yeah, he gets to be like, oh, some hot babes, and it turns out just a hologram. And then for some reason, like, despite the fact he's not been there very long, we see this guy here, the Petrified Man, show up at the end of the issue. Now you're probably thinking, who the heck is the Petrified Man? Even I wonder that too. And I read these issues like several years ago. I have honestly no idea. Come on, seriously? Sorry about this. I hate this. I really do. I have to do this on here because my laptop is not exactly working on what I wanted to. So, let's see. Who is the Petrified Man? Because he only exists just in these 2 issues. Oh yeah, this is actually his debut. Yeah, and who is this guy? Well, they don't reveal who this is until like the very next issue. But yeah, this book is his debut. Yep. I mean, like you last time, I do not like the fact he does that. So, who is the Petrified Man? Yeah. Come on, thank you. Okay, so close. Oh, come on, stop it. So yeah, basically like, yeah, and by the way, the whole thing being in jail, right after the very next issue. Yep, so he comes back, and this whole thing, him being in prison for 5 years, he's 5 years in the future for 5 years, but yeah, and it turns out like a whole bunch of like hollow fights, and he's broken up, like, yeah, and apparently like somehow time is being weird, like, oh, back in a couple minutes, like, oh, there's a bruise on his cheek. Yeah, and they continue fight. And yeah, this actually is revealed to be Booster Gold. Yeah, another version from the future. And then 43 wraps up the story arc. Yep, it wraps it up. Yep, because the whole thing can be in the future. Yeah, it goes a whole lot of time travel. And so he has this last issue. So the last issue of Keith and DeMatteis' run, we have Booster Gold team up with a legion of superheroes for an issue. Which, this actually is a really cool idea. And I don't remember Jam actually, I think Keith Giffen did write some Legion stuff. I don't think Jam ever did. Like, I don't remember if they actually wrote any Legion. I don't remember if they have. If they did, I don't really remember. Let's see. In the case of Jan DeMatteis, he has written a couple issues of Legion. But you're thinking, okay, what about his freaking partner, Keith Giffen? Has he wrote any Legion stuff? That's a really question. Well, I started reading Legion, that book that he did where it's presenting stuff. He actually did have a brief run on Legion superheroes. Yep. He's the one who did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, he did issues for Volume 2, 3, and 4. Yep, he did. He did like mostly the first 13 issues of Volume 4. He did most of, a good chunk of basically Volume 3 with probably Paul Levitz, and of course co-writing with, of course, issue in Volume 2. Yep. So he's the one who basically has experience with the Legion. Yeah. So maybe this was Keith Giffen's idea. Who knows? So, really interesting idea. I do find this issue really good. And it's a nice way to wrap up the run. Yep. Now, as for my final thought, now, basically, I'm going to give these issues here a 9. Basically, I'm going to give it a... there's no, like, bulletin board these issues, per se. No, not here for some reason. Yeah, because normally they'd be here just teasing stuff. But these issues, no, not really. It's like, basically, that these guys just had to, basically, resolve a plot thread that was there from the start of Booster back in the 80s and just never addressed. I guess they felt as though they had to do it because they did probably feel as though, plus basically I'm sure Jurgens probably signed off on it, who knows. But it seems kind of weird that these issues are still to this day not in trade. And by the way, these issues just came out a decade ago. But here's the strange thing. The 4 issues come after these 5 issues, they're in trade. But 30 and 45, not in trade. Don't know why. I'm going to get a bit of a lower rating than usual for Booster Gold because despite like 39 being a really good issue, I kind of felt as though that the whole 40 to 42 felt a bit pointless. It's like, okay, go to the future, are in prison for a plot thread. Like 43 is another really good issue. I get basically 39 and 43 and basically a 10 out of 10 because I enjoy those issues. 40 to 42, I'm giving those a 9.5. Simply because it felt like a bit of a step down from the previous stuff. My final thoughts on Keith Giffen and Dane DeMatteis' very brief run they had on Booster Gold. It's a very interesting run. I'd say that the opening story they did, the first 7 issues were really good. Except the last half, basically, it's like you have 2 good issues, and then you have 3 okay issues. Alright? But we're not done Booster Gold yet. We have one more trailer together and be done with Volume 2, but yeah, still a lot more to go on Booster Gold. Next up we have is Black Knight, The Fall of Dan Waltman. Excuse me, excellent cover. This book is written by Frank Terry and worked by, well, mostly basically 2 artists, Luca Pizzera and Keb Walker for a couple issues. Now they also have your Black Legacy, which is not done by Frank Terry. Nope, it's a Rafael Lucchio and Brand he's actually the artist. Now, the origins issue, the origin original sins issue, this is actually a debut of the woman who actually is the expert on the Black Knight, who talks to Dan, and he's in his apartment, he's in his underwear, and he's got a bunch of sword marks on the walls. Because apparently the sword is driving him crazy. Now, here's the thing. Prior to this was never explored at all the whole time with the Ebony Blade. Because it is set up in this very issue, not in the Black Knight book. This is actually set after the original issue, where the sword is driving him crazy. And a bit of mental thing with him. And this kind of explored his very brief ongoing series. Yes, when I first heard that this book was going to be ongoing, now, Black Knight is an absolute great character, and he definitely fit a mold of a good ongoing series, but sadly this book was canceled to 5 issues. Was it canceled because it was bad? No. According to what I heard, and Frank Terry himself basically pointed this out, it was canceled due to low sales. Apparently it wasn't a good big seller of Marvel. Now, basically, this is also one of 2 books that are set on Weird World. Yes, the concept that was first introduced back in the 70s in the Weird World stories by Doug Moak, and then brought back thanks to Secret Wars, the 2015 version, which had a mini-series tied into it, and of course had a follow-up ongoing series by Sam Humphries that was canceled after 6 issues, and you had this book, which was canceled just before that. Yes, they canceled this book first, and next month they canceled Weird World and All New Hawkeye. Now, in these issues, Black Knight is basically got his own kingdom on Weird World known as New Avalon. They kind of explain how he got here, where this is presumably after the Original Sins issue, and they do have it where, in these issues, where Sam is kind of with the Uncanny, because we have a guest appearance by the Uncanny Avengers. Which version, you might ask? Well, it's the lineup that Gary Duggan had during his run, because Deadpool's there, obviously. Yes, this is actually this is actually probably not. Now, the thing is, Uncanny Avengers post Secret Wars did not really play a big role in the Marvel Universe as a whole, like they did pre-Secret Wars. Apparently, it seemed like post-Secret Wars, they did not play a really big role at all. It seems like whatever role they had went straight to the Avengers. Because at the time, it was written by Mark Waid, and that was like the premier Avengers book. As for Uncanny Avengers, it felt like a bit of a step down, and plus also, one of the biggest issues with the whole run is that, you see, in the previous 2 volumes, the Unity Squad, which they were called in issue 5, were headquartered at the Avengers Mansion. But then for some reason, post-Secret Wars, Tony Stark sold the mansion and became a sleazy hotel, and the Avengers, the Unity Squad, they said headquartered at one of Deadpool's old theaters, as a nod to the fact Deadpool went to movies in 2016. And the book itself, under Gary Duggan, lasted for a whopping 23 issues, and then it got replaced by Jim Zebb, who did the last 7 issues of the run, known as Stars and Garters, which featured the return of the Beast. Now, we do have where Black Knight, where he apparently killed one of the Exemplars because of his sword, and they tried to take his sword, and so basically he decided to take a Quinjet, and apparently a portal opens up near New York, and he goes straight to Weird World. Yes, how the heck this is possible? Like, this was, in this book, I'm sure Frank Terry was going to explain that in a future story, but low sales have ended that happening. So he gets to what was going to be Avalon. And while he's there, thanks to the sword, he kills the previous king. And because the fact, apparently according to the rules of the country, you kill the king, you become king. How does he kill him? Beheading him, of course. Yeah, and then of course you have this whole thing of like, one thing that I do remember basically a review for issue 1 is that if you're not familiar with Black Knight, the first issue explains him really well. Explains his legacy. They do have the original Black Knight, Sir Percy, show up here as a ghost. The whole thing of Sir Percy showing up as a ghost, that has been something that's been around since his debut back in the 70s. Well, when he joined the Avengers, they had that as a frequent thing for him, where Sir Percy was there to offer advice. He's basically a mentor to his descendant. That's basically what he was used for. And he's kind of like that here. He's also chronicling his own time in New Avalon. And he also does warn of the coming of the Avengers. Though it's the Unity Squad. And apparently they remember the Hulk. Apparently Hulk visited Weird World at some point. I don't remember when that happened. So the line we have here is basically, well, like I mentioned, the Gary Duggan book. It's basically Deadpool, Steve Rogers, who's not Catholic at this point in time. We have Deadpool. There's also Emily, the one who's the human. Quicksilver. Wolverine's not, I think, in the Rogue. I don't. Let's see. Let me take a look here for this lineup here because it is, well, supposedly Spider-Man's on the team, but he quits after the first issue. Yeah, for some, it's like, oh yeah, the Human Torch is here, except it's Johnny Storm. Oh, her name is Sinise. There's also Quicksilver, Dr. Voodoo. Scarlet Witch rejoins after this run wraps up. So it's almost like basically that this whole story arc, this whole run itself, you could say it takes place right after Spidey quit the team in the opening issue, and basically fills the gap between issues 1 and 2. That's the place you could put this whole run. So, like, yeah, if you just like bring it back, like, no, he's the king, so we'll take the sword. So somehow Dan convinces him to leave the woman there, who's the expert on him. They'll eventually get the sword back because basically it's the best thing for him. And then, of course, basically, like, well, with him basically there, but here's the strange thing about him. Like, as soon as this book wraps up, here is really the weirdest thing about this book. He is not seen again for over a year. No, seriously. He is not seen for over a year. Like, the next time he's seen is into Secret Empire. And you're thinking, really? He's not seen until Secret Empire. Why the heck that is? I don't know. Now, based upon the way the book basically progresses, it's almost like basically the way that Frank Terry told the story is that he was going to come back, but that didn't happen. Now, if I got a chance, now here's the thing, he was at the Comic-Con was that, but I did not get a chance to ask him if there was any future plans for this character. Like, was like a future story arc he was going to be in? Honestly, it's a big question mark. Now, of course, you might be asking, Nick, what the heck did Black Knight do after the wrap of his very brief ongoing series? Yes, this was ongoing. Despite Marvel's claim it wasn't, but it actually was. Yeah, it was a very brief ongoing. So, after this book wrapped up, you could say presumably his next appearance was definitely in, well, they say it was actually, well, U.S. Avengers, roughly a year after this book concluded, where apparently he became part of the Champions of Europe. Despite the fact he's actually American. Yeah, this is never actually explained of why. Actually, it's Euroforce. Yep, he joins Euroforce. Which basically, they previously appeared in Avengers World. And so, after the one issue of U.S. Avengers, he appeared in the final issue of Champions Volume 2. Yeah. Probably in a recap, but let's see. Probably the next time he was seen was probably during War of the Realms. Yeah, where he had sort of a role in that. Not really big role per se, but basically a role. And mostly his appearance has been very sporadic afterwards. Pop-up appearance to Kill Crew, Empire Avengers. He appeared for a handful of issues of Savage Avengers. He did appear in Super X-Men King in Black, Mission Black Knight. He had another miniseries that I had talked about, Black Knight, Curse He played. He did return for the final issues of Avengers Volume 1. He had a one-shot dealing with Death Doctor Strange. He was technically, his most recent book he appeared in was Seven Avengers Volume 2, which sadly ended after only just 10 issues. No, seriously, 10 issues. Yeah, as for why in the world that it ended, I have heard a rumor it ended because of low sales. And no, Black Knight's are responsible for, but Yeah, that's basically what that's the most racing he did with Sad Avengers. Yep. But this book here, uh, it's really good. I kind of wish Marvel would do a little bit more with Black Knight. I think the reason why they decided to do his miniseries, Curse of the Blade, was probably because of his appearance in the movie Eternals. Yeah, I believe so. Which I have discussed before. That's my Cy Spurrier. And by the way, that miniseries came out roughly 2 years ago. Yep. So, not much else to talk about here. When it comes to Avengers, just really a book here. Okay, so that's a particular view. Next up is going to be Eden Zero, and that's probably going to be it for tonight. So, expect maybe both for you tomorrow. Okay? Next view.